the chair of this meeting tonight. Welcome to a council workshop on the Windridge Park to Parkgate Village Spirit Trail Eastern Extension, and thank you all for coming. I believe we will begin with a staff presentation.
Is there going to be an opportunity to ask staff questions after their presentation?
There will be.
Thank you.
Shane Devine?
Hello,
yeah. This is Shane Devine, Senior Project Manager for the district, and he will be introducing the subject matter for today's workshop.
Okay. Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll be sharing with you an update that relates to the specific segment of the Spirit Trail between Windridge Park and Parkgate Village area. I'd like to start off with some context of how this discussion fits into the rest of the Spirit Trail Eastern Extension, specifically with the reduction of the overall budget from 20 million to 15 million. It's your staff's view that this segment is the highest priority part of the Spirit Trail and will provide the best return on investment for any dollar spent on the Spirit Trail Eastern Extension. This segment also has the most potential to attract grant funding. So for these reasons, the focus and topic of the discussion would not have changed and did not change as a result of the recent change, sorry, in the 5-year capital plan. Yeah. At 15 million total or 20 million total, staff recommends that the next dollar invested by council into the Spirit Trail is invested in this segment specifically, and an active transportation crossing of McCartney Creek. So with that, we come to a few questions that I would like council to keep in mind as the presentation progresses, and we'll come back to them at the end of the presentation. Staff need clear answers on these questions to make any more meaningful progress on the Spirit Trail. After nearly 2 years since the Spirit Trail was added to the capital plan, it's time to take what we've learned from study and engagement and move towards construction. Additionally, the most important and competitive grant funding opportunity for the project is currently available, and council support is needed at this time to pursue that opportunity. The presentation will be pretty short, and we'll leave room at the end for questions. So I'll be focusing on describing the process of how staff took feedback from council and the public to evaluate many potential routes between Windridge and Parkgate. Through significant engagement with the public and council, we heard that there was a strong desire for comprehensive route evaluation, basically looking at many, many routes. In response to what we heard from council and the public, over the past 6 months, we've explored well over 50 route combinations for this section of the Spirit Trail, and that's what you can see here. In the green dashed lines are all of the routes that we considered, and we considered all combinations of those lines. Once we identified all those potential routes, work started on understanding the feasibility of each route. This map summarizes that next step of the evaluation process. The green lines on this map represent routes remaining under consideration after this screening process, whereas the dashed gray lines represents routes that are no longer under consideration. In most cases, those are no longer under consideration because of property constraints. In other words, the district doesn't own or control enough land on these routes. That's mostly what you're seeing with the red callouts. The screening step was crucial in keeping efforts reasonable and to allow more focus on the routes that have legitimate potential. To help inform this work, we completed tree surveys, topographic surveys, 3D scanning, creek crossings, structural assessments, archaeological reviews, and other work. This map shows, the dashed line on this, on the left of the page in the Blue Ridge community here represents some of the other route variations that were not screened out. But the highlighted route here is the recommended route that best meets council priorities and what we've heard from the community. Option 2 is also shown as it's the next best route, but I should mention that it's not currently possible with the existing budget. The recommended route would utilize the existing trails within Windridge Park to the south of Canland Ice Sports, Ron Andrews Rec Center, and the Windsor Bubble. It also includes a crossing of McCartney Creek and utilizes the Northlands Trail to connect to the Parkgate area. Once at Parkgate, you'll notice that there are still several options under consideration about where the trail could go, and that could be selected in the future. A key advantage of the recommended route is that it maximizes the use of existing trails, which is something we've heard many times from council and the public. There is no other route permutation that uses more trail or fewer roads. Early conceptual work has progressed at a bronze standard for the routes, with the exception of the proposed McCartney Creek Bridge. Building the trail out to a bronze standard would provide maybe somewhat lower quality active transportation improvements, but still be lower cost and impact fewer trees while providing improvements that are still comfortable for many. Bronze will look different in different locations. For example, in the context of an existing trail, maybe that means keeping the existing width narrower if it's satisfactory. That can help reduce tree loss and reduce the need for costly retaining walls or other infrastructure. It could also mean keeping gravel surfacing instead of asphalt on trails with lower volumes. The benefit here is that, given the financial picture, we can still make meaningful improvements instead of no improvements, and we can concentrate the available funding towards specific locations that are physical barriers, such as the McCartney Creek crossing. About McCartney Creek crossing, I want to take a few minutes and zoom in on it. This slide shows McCartney Creek running down the center of the page. And I've shown Windsor Bubble to just locate ourselves and the proposed bridge location there. Both the recommended route as well as the alternative option cross McCartney at the same location. This is because after considering 7 locations, we could only recommend that this location has sufficient district-owned right-of-way to construct a bridge and its approaches. Additionally, putting a bridge in this location results in a spear trail that utilizes the fewest roads and the most existing trails, like I mentioned before. From an external grant funding perspective, a bridge in this location is highly attractive. The bridge will most likely attract the majority of external grant funding for the entire spear trail. This is because it improves and creates safe and accessible routes to schools. And it improves active transportation options for nearby communities within Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Removing this bridge would likely not allow council to realize the funding goal of 50% external grant funding for the Spirit Trail. So I developed this map to show the big picture of the funding for this segment. As you can see, the portion highlighted in blue is where most of the investment is needed, but also which is most competitive for grants and therefore likely to get external grant funding. I'd like to point out that the blue segment includes the bridge, but also more than 1 kilometer of trail upgrades. And we're quite confident that this can be delivered for $7 to $8 million. That $7 to $8 million is inclusive of all the costs anticipated as design consulting, project management, stakeholder engagement, permitting, contingency, as well as the main construction contract. It's also listed in 2026 dollars. As you can see, TransLink has already agreed to partner on the bridge project, and staff are optimistic about the chances for the Government of Canada's Active Transportation Fund. Applications to that grant, the Canada grant, are due on February 26th, and I understand staff will seek resolution from council on February 24th. The green portion highlighted here on the right of the slide can be completed at a lower cost, mostly because no new bridge is required for this segment. And because it would be upgraded to a bronze standard. There are some localized places where meaningful investment would still be needed, like crossing Mount Seymour Parkway. And we will, staff also intend to apply for a Canada grant for this segment as well, though we're less optimistic about its chances of receiving that funding. So that concludes my presentation for this evening. And the final slide is just the list of questions that I'd like to focus on. And yeah, happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Devine, for all your hard work in the matter. Before we begin a discussion amongst council, I'm going to make Mr. Devine available for any questions that may be posed by council members.
Oh, I have a
Councilor Murray.
question. Thank you, Mr. Devine, for your presentation. We just have received tonight on table at 10 after 6, an email from the Wild Bird Trust. They're stating that they have not heard from the district since July 2024 in regards to correspondence that goes back to 2018 requesting protection for the McCartney Creek Wildlife Corridor. And I'm just wondering, I'm a bit concerned about this letter. I've not heard this concern until tonight. And I'm a bit concerned that they're concerned about the corridor along with the Tsleil-Waututh. And I'm wondering if we have any comments in regards to our communication with the Wild Bird Trust.
Yeah, so I can say a few words about it. I might flip it over to Peter afterwards. But so yeah, we have had a few discussions with Wild Bird Trust about this project. It's difficult to have those conversations meaningfully without knowing whether the project is a project yet. I think I don't have much more to say about the specifics.
So I think
Yeah.
they're mainly concerned about the bridge crossing.
Yeah,
That's their main
they
concern.
are, yeah.
And they're stating that, their concerns about the wildlife corridor of that area. So my question would be if we could go back to the map with sort of the bold and green there.
This one?
I guess that's one of them. Was there any thought, given that a good portion of this is going to be going through the neighborhood of Plymouth on a bus route and on a road that is a bit of a windy road that narrows. And if you look at the Spirit Trail throughout, specifically the city, was there a concept of running this trail up Lytton and using that $7 to $8 million for a bridge in a wildlife corridor and building a multi-purpose path on the south side of Mount Seymour Parkway that would connect up to Strathaven and then into the trail system on the north side? We're doing this as an alternative to the car, but maybe at the a park.
Councilor Murray.
So I'm just wondering if that was my question.
You'll have a full opportunity for debate.
I'm not
and
debating, I'm
discussion.
asking a
If you have a
question.
specific clarifying question for Mr. Devine, now's your time to answer it.
So my
And
question
all
is,
council will be given the same opportunity.
was there a concept with this money to run a protected multi-purpose pathway from Lytton to Strathaven?
Through your worship, on Mount Seymour Parkway? Yeah, that's been considered for sure. Yeah.
So we could look at that,
We have looked at it and we're not recommending that. Yeah,
but council could look at it
Yep.
again if they were interested.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Other specific clarifying questions from council for Mr. Devine. Councilor Back.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hansen. Thanks very much, Mr. Devine, for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about the bridge specifically. Obviously, it represents a huge price tag, $7 to $8 million. Recognizing that the location of it makes it very attractive for external funding. I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's paying for it. It's a lot of money. I'm just wondering, we're looking at the bronze standard across this Spirit Trail, which I generally support. I actually think with a number of our active transportation projects where we've taken that approach, it's allowed us to get them built quicker and for less. But what are our options with that bridge? Like, is there just one level of bridge that has to be at that level, or can we look at a lower cost bridge?
Yeah, through your worship, it's quite early. And so this cost estimate is several years out, and we don't have a defined design criteria or shape, look, feel of that bridge. We don't even know exactly where in this location it could go. And so what I've done is given a high level cost estimate, and there is opportunity to get that cost estimate down. An order of magnitude, I don't think so. It still has to be designed to right, bridge codes and such, and it's a 75-year life piece of infrastructure. So we wouldn't recommend, building it too narrow that you'll regret that in 30 years or something. There are opportunities to try and get this cost down. So I hope that answers your question. There's not significant room, but we're confident we can do it for that.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I can see with the Lynn Creek Bridge, given that it's right in the heart of a town center, coming into where we have, lots of people living and a new community center. It's a bit of a showpiece because of where it is, and it had a significant price tag as well, just over 5 million, I think, a few years ago. But in this location where it's not as visible, I just think it doesn't have to necessarily be as nice a looking bridge.
No,
as long as it's
and we've
functional.
certainly taken that into account. We're looking to preserve as much of the canopy as possible, and so there's no view cone to look at the bridge. So it's not meant to be an aesthetic architectural bridge. It's meant to be pretty utilitarian. The reason it's costly is because it's 50% longer than the Lynn Creek Bridge. Costs with bridge go exponentially with length. And so what we've tried to do is find the narrowest part of the McCartney Creek Canyon to try and get that cost down. So yeah, I hope that answers.
Great. Yeah, no, that's great. That answers that question. I have some more comments around it, but I'll save that. Thanks.
Any further specific clarifying questions for Mr. Devine before we begin our general discussion? Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Hanson. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you. And thank you very much for this report. I know you've done a ton of work on it. And it's been an ongoing process. I too have some questions about the bridge. I'm really, tentatively supportive of a bridge, but not an $8 million bridge. I agree with what's been said about the Sealand project, that bridge, $5 million.
Councillor Pope, can I ask you to restrict yourself to clarifying questions, because we'll have full opportunity.
So could a Bailey Bridge, would that be possible which is much cheaper, woodwork in there, not as pretty, but significantly cheaper?
We haven't prejudged what type of bridge this is going to be at all. So I couldn't tell you whether it's going to be suspension bridge or truss bridge or anything like that.
Right.
So at the stage we would be at, the next stage we'd be opening to the consulting industry to figure out what is the cheapest bridge to get from point A to point B.
So that cost could significantly be reduced if we went
I think
for
the cost could be reduced. Again, I'm not prepared to say significantly.
Okay.
Just to highlight that, I don't think there's a way to get this to be a $4 million number, but maybe 6, right? I know I'm just kind of estimating on the fly here, but In my experience, you can't get an 85-meter clear span bridge much less than what we said there. I'd also just add one piece here. There's 1,000 meters of trails included in that 7 to 8 million. And so the Lynn Creek Bridge, the 5 million that everybody's familiar with, also includes 300 meters of trails. And so those costs are built in. So it is closer to a 6.6 or a $7 million bridge, and then a little bit of other money for the trail network itself. So everything blue is $7 to $8 million.
Okay, thank you. Now, turning to the northern route, the recommended route from staff, how accessible is that going to be, given that we're actually only going to end up putting a couple of $1 million into it because the bulk of the money is going to go to the bridge?
Through your worship, that question, Ehab, if you want to jump in, I can take it, but you might have a little bit more. Basically, it's not going to be AAA. We can't get there.
And so what does that mean exactly? Not AAA?
Sorry, all ages and abilities, right? So
Okay.
that would be the gold standard for active transportation. But it could be comfortable for many people in a few locations, and comfortable for most people in a few locations, and sort of existing state in other locations, right? So we'd pick and choose which locations require investment, and if there's other locations along that northern route, maybe they don't need investment because they're already operational and sufficient.
As I understand it, the AAA factor and all ages, all abilities, a big part of that criteria is the inclines and the hilliness. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but there isn't a thing you can do about the hilliness of the northern route, correct?
There are ways to reduce grades. There's no way to reduce the absolute amount of climbing. But you could do switchbacks in some locations. Some locations we don't have the land to do that. You could also do grading of the hills. Maybe they're too steep, like too sharp of a curve, and you could flatten out that curve. So these are marginal things around the edges. But yeah, generally there's not a good way to battle the inclines in North Van.
So it sounds like if the northern route was approved, that what we'd end up with at the end of the day would resemble what we currently have, except for some minor upgrades.
I mean, that's subjective. I think it could be pretty significantly improved from what it is today.
But it still wouldn't get us to all ages, all abilities.
Correct. Not with the investment.
So kids couldn't go riding on their bikes in one direction, for example.
They may be able to.
They were on an e-bike, or they were a really strong kid.
I mean, there aren't really significant, maybe like Cliffmont down in Deep Cove, but we're not talking about that location today.
No, I'm talking about other sections that I've ridden myself.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to answer that question. Yeah, I've ridden on it as a kid. Some kids can ride it. Does it have hills? Yes. Can we get it to AAA with the investment? No. Yeah.
And again, the grants are actually not going to go towards those improvements that would bring it up to those standards. It's mostly the grants are going to go to the $8 million bridge. Excuse me?
Um,
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
I thought this was a clarification, not her point of view. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Point of order.
Yeah, can you repeat your question? Sorry.
So we're looking at spending $8 million on the bridge. And according to the material here, that is largely, or at least 4.4, 5.4.
The question is just how the grant funding is allocated. And yeah, its allocation is between the trail and the bridge in this proposal that we're discussing.
That's not the question. The question is mainly pertains to the fact that after we spend 10 to 15 million dollars on a northern route, that northern route is going to pretty much resemble the way it looks today, with some minor
Well, you've already
upgrades.
covered that ground.
Yeah, this is not helpful, Councillor Hanson, Acting Mayor Hanson. The interruption is not helpful. None of it is. But anyway, those are my questions for the moment.
You're going to have an opportunity for discussion on this. Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor. So I think just in terms of some of the questions that have been asked and to kind of supplement kind of what Shane's been talking about, the staff recommendation you have before you is trying to balance the number of constraints and feedback that we've received from both council as well as the community over the last couple of years. The things we're trying to really balance is we've been asked to use existing trails. We've been asked to reduce the amount that we're going on street. We've been asked to reduce our environmental impact, and we've been asked to maximize our external grant funding for the project as well. So what Shane and the team has presented to council is recognizing that looking at all the constraints that we have in stitching together our existing trail system, in order for us to be as competitive as possible for external funding, we believe that a bridge over McCartney Creek will be the only option for us to maximize external grant funding. I recognize that some members of council may want to look at some alternative options. I just have some concern that there might be some risk there that we may not attract external funding for that work. So that's what we're trying to balance in terms of the infrastructure or the proposal that's put before you in terms of the lines on the map, and trying to extract as much external funding as possible. One thing to also add as well is, as we talk about this McCartney Creek crossing, we know that accessibility is going to have to be there in order for us to be competitive. So it's going to probably be 3 to 4 meters wide. It's going to have a gentle grade for that bridge. That's probably a given. So that's kind of where that number that you've got before you is being identified. And then in terms of the AAA component, all ages and abilities, one of the key considerations to that is separation. So when we talk about an on-street facility, how much is it separated from other uses and the likes as well? So it's not going to be an all ages and ability in terms of a gold standard, but it's certainly going to be comfortable for most. And so kids might be able to bike, and as Shane was alluding to as well, you know, there might be little pinch points that might have a tree or two there, or a little bit of widening on the trail, just to make it a little bit more wider for people to go past each other. So that's kind of what we're looking at as we look at the entire trail system. So I just wanted to add that clarity to council in terms of how we've come across this, talking about why we're putting forward the recommendation for the McCartney Creek crossing, and trying to balance all the different interests that we've heard the last couple of years. Thanks.
Mr. Cohen, before Mr. Devine leaves and we begin our general discussion, any other specific questions? Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just to clarify, there's a lot of concerns about cost, Shane, but thanks for clarifying. I believe I heard you right, that the entire blue section is estimated between $7 and $8 million. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you confirm that this section's cost, that this blue section, if you get the grants, it would only net out to the district having to pay between 1.4 and 2.4 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Just want to double check that. Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Mary, clarifying question?
Yeah, a clarifying question. So what was the costing between Lytton and Strathaven for a multi-purpose path?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but
So can you provide that to council?
Yep.
Okay, that would be great. And my second question is, why do we have to spend more in order to get money in grants?
do you want to take that, Peter? But I do want to clarify my answer to the previous one. Net to the district, the Lytton Mount Seymour Parkway option is roughly the same as net to the district, McCartney Creek Crossing, with these grants included.
I thought you said you didn't have the number.
I know generally, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's in the range of the net impact to the district.
In regards to a AAA standard, on this existing route, the Parkway is a gradual incline from Lytton, almost flat until you get to Emerson, and then it completely flattens out when you get to Strathaven, and then it's again flat on the northern side most of the time. But if you look at from Lytton, down into Windridge and then up Plymouth on a bus route, on a residential road that I suspect the parking will have to be removed. There's a lot more grade change in there, and I'm not sure. I'd like to understand the economies of scale or the economies of a multipurpose Spirit Trail bike path on the Parkway versus the inclines that are. So my question would be, can you provide that information to council?
Yeah, I think you can.
Thank you.
Councillor Forbes?
Thank you, Your Worship, or Acting Worship. I think I misunderstood, or I didn't quite catch your answer to the amount of discussion you had with the Wild Bird Trust. And I'm concerned about their email because they say they haven't heard anything from
The
district
district.
since roughly summer last year.
Do you want to speak to that, Peter?
Sure. So through the acting mayor, we did a lot of engagement processes in the first half of last year, and the team needed to go away and actually do a whole bunch of technical work to look at, as Shane shared, there was 50 different options to look at from a technical perspective. And this is the next step in that discussion with council in terms of we need to really identify what line on a map are we working with right now in order for the project to move forward, so we can answer some of these particular questions. We're aware of some of the concerns that come from key stakeholders and partners and the likes as well. Shane and the team has been working with many, many different stakeholders and partners. And so we're putting forward what we're understanding is probably the recommended solution from staff. Once we get that clarity from council of where we're moving towards, we can then start to re-engage with all those folks in terms of saying, here's what we've heard and here's the direction what we're going and how do we incorporate your concerns.
That's kind of an after the fact response to them. They have concerns and we're just going to ignore them, make the decision and go back and tell them what decision we made. I do want to say I'm in favor of the northern route, but I think that's a little bit backwards. They should have been involved in discussion here. But I also read can't remember which report it was now, but I read that this McCartney Creek Bridge is being elevated. It'll be built higher. And what I read was that was the purpose, to not infringe on the wildlife corridor. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the acting mayor, the McCartney Creek Bridge that we proposed is about 85 meters, and it will be up from the top of the canyon in McCartney Creek to the other top of the canyon. Currently, there's a 5 meter long bridge just over the water in the bottom of the canyon. And so people walk down a large set of stairs. And so in order to remove that grade and make it more accessible to more people, it would be a flat bridge across the top of the canyon. So yes, it would be elevated. I don't know how to have it off the top of my head, but.
You mean elevated from what the current one is, not like it's going to be elevated, it's going to be in that location and be elevated? No. You just mean it's in a different.
It's in a different location, slightly different
and it'll be
location,
flat.
slightly north, and significantly elevated. Yeah, so way far away from the water, like several stories up.
So there'll be steps up to this bridge, or it'll be straight across?
No, the topography is such that it's a canyon, and we're going to go from one side of the canyon to the other side of the canyon. Whereas now you walk down the canyon and then back up the canyon.
Bit confusing. I said I was in favor of the northern route, and I think, we already kind of decided that the northern route was the route, and that's why staff has come back showing us the northern route, because that was the message that you got, or you would have come back with more than one route here. The northern route uses less roads, it costs less, and there's less tree removal, and it takes you into Mother Nature, so to speak. And those were all reasons that we heard why they wanted the
Clarifying
northern
question,
route.
Councillor Forrest?
So, Mike, I'll reserve it till the next round.
Question from Councillor Back.
Mayor Hanson, the northern route will ask riders to cross 4 lanes of traffic on Mount Seymour Parkway. What does the improvement from the present situation look like in the proposed route for that crossing there?
Through the acting mayor, we're not exactly sure yet what that looks like. That detailed design needs to be done, and that'll be done sort of once we know that we need to cross Mount Seymour Parkway. But like I said previously, that is definitely one location where significant investment needs to be made to really make that crossing safe.
Yes, I would agree. I think when we're thinking about 2 kids on their bikes, a young family, there's nothing safe about that crossing currently, and I would definitely need some attention if we were to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll let Mr. Devine go and begin our debate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to leave it on this one.
So
Yeah.
would anyone like to move receipt? Councillor Back, seconder. Councillor Ma. Councillor Back, your comments?
So I'm going to try to stick to the direction that staff are seeking tonight by referring to the 4 questions that were in the report and the presentation. I'll start with the last question first. Does council support an application to seek 60% of the funding through the Government of Canada? And my answer would be yes to that, of course. We want to maximize, in fact, we have to maximize external funding as part of this. And then in terms of the third question, do I support this segment mostly at a bronze standard? I've commented on that. I think it's been effective with our other active transportation projects in the district in recent years, allowing us to get more built faster, and recognizing that we can always upgrade, sections that are of a bronze standard. So I support that as well. In terms of the McCartney Creek Bridge and its current location, I'm generally supportive of it. I do have real concerns with the cost. I think spending $7 to $8 million on a bridge, regardless of who's funding it, is really hard to justify. And I would like to see ways to get that number down. But I think the location, for all the reasons that were highlighted in the report, does make sense and would work for any of the route options or either of the 2 route options that we're looking at. So I do support that bridge in its location. Now, in terms of question number 1, I find this to be the hardest question to answer. We're looking at 2 options. What staff are recommending are largely using trails that are already in place, trails that have significant challenges if we're talking about all ages and abilities. I always think of my own 2 kids and biking with them, and the grade challenges here are real for anyone who've had an opportunity to ride any of these paths. I'm really have concern, and I do regret that we're not looking at this to Deep Cove, at least in the 5-year plan. That's always how the Spirit Trail was envisioned. And I think particularly with the northern route, we're going to have some real challenges getting it down into the Cove. So I'm going to also comment on the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. We're literally designing this Spirit Trail around the Tsleil-Waututh Nation's reserve land. And I think about how much better this project would be if it was a true collaboration with Tsleil-Waututh Nation, if it supported their goals as a nation, the Statlow district, and the various route options that could exist if we were to have those kind of meaningful conversations, council to council and staff to staff, about what we can do together. That doesn't sit right with me. And so I'll just I'll just make that comment, and I think this whole project would be a lot better if it were working with Tsleil-Waututh Nation. I know that this has become a divisive issue in the community. I hear support for the northern route, not necessarily from people that are riding the northern route or will necessarily ride the northern route, but just don't want to see any of the southern options entertained. I hear people that just want a connection to Deep Cove, regardless of what it looks like. But I do hear support for a southern route for people that recognize the opportunities that a southern route would bring in terms of its connection ultimately to the Cove, to Weyahwachin and Kates. And so, I tend to lean towards those options for those reasons. But I do find answering this question challenging. I want to be able to give staff direction, recognizing how much time has gone into getting us to this point. And Mr. Devine, I know you're presenting to us on your last day at the district, and what a way to leave. And I do want to thank you for all the work that you put into to looking at all the various route possibilities. But those are just sort of my initial comments.
Councillor Mo.
Thank you, Councillor Back, for your comments. I'm going to take a similar approach and answer the questions and leave question one for last. I do support the location of the McCartney Bridge. The cost is a concern to everyone, especially in this current environment. But I believe that if the district can achieve those grants, the net impact to the residents is manageable. I will defer to the engineers to decide on the standard of the bridge. And I know Shane and his team and Peter and his team have looked at different options. So I will trust the staff's recommendation on the scope of the bridge. And I do support number 4, I do support the staff, applying for funding where possible to keep our costs down. Now, in terms of do I support the northern route? I have written on this these routes with staff, and both routes have challenges. Geography, use of roads, taking down trees, a whole bunch of issues. But I think this community does want some progress on the Spirit Trail. I'm comfortable with it going to Parkgate for now, but I do hope that eventually it does make its way to the Cove. And as other speakers have said, the biggest challenge for me here when I look at either routes is that the riders do have to go onto Mount Seymour Parkway, and for the northern route, they have to cross at Strathhaven. I'm going to request that the staff take extra time to really work this through. I know you have transportation experts, and similar to school crossings, we need to make sure that crossing major roads are safe for everyone. So I will trust the staff to address that issue. But overall, it's yes to all 4 of the questions that the staff has asked council to comment on. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. I'll go to the 4 questions. Starting question 1, yes, I do agree with staff's recommendation for Windridge to Parkgate Village. I'll skip over number 2 for now. Number 3, I support as well that if we need to deliver at bronze standard, given the financial restraints, to be responsible. We've done bronze standard trails before, so I think that will work fine. And if at a later date we have more funds, we can always upgrade at that point. Number 4, yes, of course, I support getting funding from every other government we possibly can. So obviously, I yes to that. Coming into tonight's meeting, it's my error, but I thought that the McCartney Creek Bridge would have had discussions with Wild Bird Trust, and there would have been some kind of way that we could have mitigated their concerns that they're still expressing tonight with getting that bridge in and get moving on this project. I don't like the price of the bridge either, but I believe in the report, it was said that the cost is quoted in $2026. So it would be a little bit lower, hopefully. It might be a lot higher, actually, with other world events that are happening. So I'm just wondering, I'm yes to 1, 3, and 4, but I'm wondering if staff can have a dialogue with Wild Bird Trust and see if some of the concerns they're expressing can be addressed in that manner. Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, through the acting mayor, for sure. Like the key goal for us is to identify what the alignment is, and feedback from council such as that is something that we can certainly take away if should we be progressing forward as the staff has recommended, identifying the concerns, and as we further scope out the bridge crossing, is there a way that we can meet those interests collectively?
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Murray?
Thank you. I don't support the bridge at this point right now. Because I'm disappointed that we did not discuss this issue with the Wild Bird Trust when they have been reaching out to us about that corridor since 2018. And I don't know where that fell apart. And I'd like to understand. I am going to be phoning them tomorrow, and I am going to be connecting with them. And this is an important wildlife corridor. When we rezoned Coven Mountain Forest 30 years ago, the whole argument of rezoning those areas was because of the wildlife corridor and the natural nesting portion of that forest. So we are losing a lot of forest due to development, and Tsleil-Waututh is doing a lot of it on their lands. And we are doing a lot of it. We have done a lot of it on ours. So I have some big questions about that process because I thought we had ticked all these boxes off, and apparently we haven't. I know this trail better than anyone. And I will tell you where that bridge is located coming out onto Fairfield on Plymouth is a steep incline of a hill. It's a bus route, and there's parking on both sides. There is parking on both sides. Have we discussed issues of removing parking from Plymouth with the residents? Can you stop my time?
Yeah, so through the acting mayor, we have made no commitment of stripping parking. So there is no.
I know we have made no commitment, but I sense you're gonna plunk an $8 million bridge over McCartney Creek, and you want people to come out onto Plymouth. I don't understand how you're going to cut a safe route on that vertical climb on Plymouth on a bus route without taking some parking out. This idea that somehow the southern route is more AAA than the northern is absurd. We are on a mountain. We live on a mountain. There is nothing AAA from Burr Place to Strathaven on that map, nothing. If you ride the Spirit Trail between Ambleside or within the city limits, you are crossing at Park Royal, a 2-lane intersection underneath the Lionsgate Bridge. If you cross at Pemberton, you are crossing 4 lanes on a road. You are coming out, we had to actually put chicanes in through Norgate Park because the speed of cycling in that area was so high. There are multiple crossings on roads for the Spirit Trail. They exist all the way through the city. In fact, it is an urban trail through the city with lots of crossings. So the idea that the southern portion is somehow safer than the northern is not true. One of the other issues that we have not addressed is the infrastructure to support this trail. And this is one of the fear that the residents in the Sherwood Park area have. Currently, we have an excessive amount of traffic visiting Deep Cove almost every day now, and it's not even in the summer. It's, you know, I was down there in January, it was pouring rain and the parking lot was packed. The concept of running trails, and I know as the chair of the Rec Commission, there is a concern, and I think Canlan would have a concern that people will come and park in those parking lots, get their bikes out of their cars and ride this section to Parkgate. So how will we be addressing the parking that is going to come with this part of the trail?
Sorry, could you just please repeat the question?
Well, we have two parking lots at Ron Andrews at Lytton. We have Ron Andrews and we have Canlan. And one would assume that people wanting to ride this section of the Spirit Trail may come from across the bridge and say, oh, let's go into the Seymour and ride the Spirit Trail, and come and park their cars in those two lots and unload their bikes and ride this section. Just like the residents of Sherwood have concerns that if the trail goes down to Kate's Park, the same thing is going to happen. People will drive to Kate's Park, park their car, get their bikes out and ride to the Cove. We can't support existing traffic vehicle volume in the Cove right now. We've implemented all sorts of measures and very few of them have worked. We still find ourselves congested most of the time, especially during the summer and on the weekends.
Yeah, so through the acting mayor, one of the key goals of our OCP vision is to get 35% of trips done by sustainable modes, and the Spirit Trail connection to Parkgate or wherever it may go beyond that, that's kind of one of the key pieces of creating some of this infrastructure east of the Seymour. As staff have shared previously in these discussions on the Spirit Trail, we're seeing this being quite an important local amenity in connecting some of the communities east of the Seymour and trying to get people out of their cars for local trips so they can walk or bike to, say, Parkgate as an example. If getting folks to Deep Cove is taking more cars off the street that go to Deep Cove, that is some benefit. I can't give you any guarantees if folks are going to be parking at Canlan or other these parking spots. I cannot give you that guarantee.
So we don't have any enforcement plan or?
We certainly could.
But we
certainly
don't
could.
have that in place.
We are trying to get a line on a map to start with, and then from there we can understand the concerns and work through those through detailed design.
Okay, I'll come back.
Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor Hansen. Where do I start? I think it's pretty obvious that we're all in favor of getting more funding and going with the bronze standard. I have mentioned my concerns about the bridge. I'm very concerned that that is eating up the bulk of funds that we could get for a Spirit Trail. And I'd really like to see some other options presented to us. I'm also a little uncertain about the pathway, picking up on what Councillor Murray has said about where it comes out on the other side. As far as the route goes, I have ridden the northern route twice back and forth. It's definitely beautiful. It definitely is in the forest and it's lovely, but it is hilly. And it means that it will exclude all kinds of people from riding there. In addition to that, I just shudder at the thought of, you know, little kids having to cross Mount Seymour Parkway on the Spirit Trail. And we all know how busy that parkway is and how dangerous it can be. Also, it's not a direct path to Deep Cove. It's not actually getting us to Deep Cove, which, by the way, wasn't that the whole point of this exercise to start with? When we started talking about this and when this council voted in favor of it in 2023 and again in 2024, the discussion was always about going to Deep Cove. And suddenly that's been taken off the table with the elimination of $5 million. Well, I think we can easily find $5 million in our capital plan, not the least of which could come out of the $8 million bridge and $10 million in Gulf bathroom renos. So I feel that, that leaves us with the southern route. So the southern route is the one I favor, but frankly, I'm not thrilled with it either. There's lots of challenges there. It is flatter. It's supported by people who actually would use active transportation, and it's beautiful, but it still needs work. It still needs to be having major consultations with the Tsleil-Waututh. And I think it would be like just such bad form of us to not have a council to council discussion with Tsleil-Waututh about their ideas for the Spirit Trail, which they support, and to talk to them about pathways and routes. And I know staff have done some of that preliminary work, but that seemed to mostly be focused on the Dollarton route, which was a hard no when that first came up. And that raises another point. I still like the idea of a Dollarton route. If we could somehow, navigate either around Indigenous lands or work out some kind of compromise alternate route position with Tsleil-Waututh. So I'm not sure how that form would take, but I just want to hold off of moving forward with making a decision today about going with the northern route because I feel like we're not there yet. We need to have more discussion about that expensive bridge and where it's going to land in the neighborhood and the pathways that will come out of it. And we need to have more discussion with our partners, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and hear their input. And those are my comments for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all councillors for their comments and staff. For my own comments, I wish to begin by thanking staff and in particular thanking Shane Devine. I was remiss in not acknowledging that the barrage of questions he faced from us today was on his last day working for the district. So thank you, Mr. Devine. For my part, I mean, obviously, I'm very respectful and sensitive to everyone who's spoken. But I see what's put forward by staff as a practical option for real progress towards the attainment of the Spirit Trail to Parkgate. I know it's always tempting to hold off making decisions and engaging in more discussion. In my 10 years in council, there's been plenty of engaging in more discussion. I think here is an opportunity for us to support the staff recommendations with a view to achieving a practical, constructive step in the direction of active transportation in Seymour. I appreciate that this is not perfect. I too was shocked at the idea of $7 million being spent on the bridge, and there is only one taxpayer, so that's a lot of money to be spent by public funds, and one can't help but thinking of alternative uses for $7 million. I walked the area yesterday and was concerned about the ecology and the ecological impacts. I'm also concerned of a lack of a full integrated plan that gets this trail to Deep Cove and to Kate's Park, which is the very premise of the Spirit Trail. And I'm aware, I've ridden the northern section, I'm aware of the steep terrain. However, in my view, this is a real option. It's a practical way forward, and rather than engaging in more discussion and holding off before moving forward, as has been suggested, I think we're better to pursue this, pursue the grant funding, pursue the route, pursue the bridge, and get the trail in the bronze standard to Parkgate. And from there, it is my commitment to be a consistent advocate for the connection of the trail to Deep Cove and Kate's Park so that we have fulfilled our mandate. Those are my comments. Thank you. Second time speakers. Second time, Councillor Forbes, Councillor Mary.
Oh, thank you. I support the northern part from Strathaven to Parkgate. I will tell you that the premise of the Spirit Trail was meant to go from Horseshoe Bay to Deep Cove along the waterfront. That was the premise of the whole plan. And that will never be achieved because of the port, because of railway lines, because there is no access in West Van, and there's little access in the district. And we're on a mountain. So unless we go along the waterfront, there's no other option. So it never achieves AAA. It is never, ever going to be in the spirit of how the Spirit Trail was contemplated. And that is the challenge. West Van is not doing their section. They can't because they have vertical rises in their neighborhoods and they can't achieve it along Marine Drive. So they have just like stopped that whole process. And it is equally challenging for us and very, very expensive. We have a significant amount of trail in the Seymour, probably more than any part of the district except for Frome. And it is one of the most accessible areas for people of all abilities to hike and walk and ride and visit. We have multiple beaches, et cetera. So I really think council, and Councillor Hanson, you live in this community. I think you should be very, very, very aware that this bridge coming out at Toll Cross at Fairfield is onto a 2-lane road, a bus route that goes uphill. So if that cost is going to achieve the most amount of people and little children, if we're concerned about that, being able to ride up a road, then that's money well spent. But I just do not think most people are going to, coming from that area down into Burr, I get it, but going from Burr east, I just think there's going to be few people that are going to tackle that rise. That rise is the grade is as high as Roche Point and it doesn't have the space that the route down from Indian River Road to Deep Cove Road at Strathcona can allow with a switchback. So I really hope that everybody visits that one particular area to show what people are going to have to ride up. I think it's a huge amount of money that we're spending in a time when we don't have a lot of money. And when, we are faced with significant challenges with TransLink infrastructure, with the utility of the sewage treatment plant, and the increase in taxes. We're looking at 5.5% this year. Quite a significant increase from previous years when we held at 3%. So we should be very, very clear that the expenditure of $8 million is exactly what we want to get, and it's going to achieve what we are all thinking it's going to achieve. Because I got to tell you, I have a lot of questions. And, I will repeat that I am very disappointed that we have not sat down with the Wild Bird Trust to talk about their concerns and their issues. Infrastructure coming later, build it and they will come. Oh, they come. But if you don't have infrastructure to support people coming to these communities, we have more issues in regards to congestion and parking and trailheads that sit in neighborhoods than probably anybody in the region, because the density that comes over that bridge, it's most convenient to come here and into Lynn Valley. So I do think that we have to have a plan in place to be able to support the visitors that will come and use this. So I hope that we give some tentative support for the northern route in general. In principle, I do support the northern route, not in principle. I absolutely do support the northern route. But I think there is still some questions in regards to this bridge and the access onto Plymouth. And I would like some more discussion about it. And I want to go and talk to the Wild Bird Trust.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have first, I have two clarifying questions I just want to ask. And one of them is to the CAO, Mr. Stewart. Had there been conversations with Tsleil-Waututh previously? Because I thought I'd read somewhere that they did not want the Spirit Trail going through their lands.
That's correct, Your Worship. We are trying to schedule a council-to-council meeting in the next 2 months with the Tsleil-Waututh. And they opened up that opportunity for us. So we'll have an opportunity during that council-to-council meeting to discuss it further.
Thank you. Also, if I could get Mr. Cohen to confirm what the net cost of the bridge is to the district. On one of the page handouts, it says the total estimated D&V cost for this road is less than 4 million. So we're not paying 7 or 8 million. There's grant money in there that's covering it, correct?
Yes, through the acting mayor, that is correct. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion on the $7 to $8 million McCartney Creek Bridge, and as Shane has identified, that includes some trail work. The net cost of that bridge is plus or minus a couple of $1 million. So when we talk about the 7 or 8, the net contribution for the district expected is around 2, and the balance of that getting to just under 4 is for the rest of the trail system, which we think we won't be successful in external grant funding.
Thank you. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding thinking the district is putting out 7 or 8 million, and we're not. The other thing I'd just like to mention, I haven't changed my mind. I mean, at the council meeting that the Mayor Mike Little brought up about the spur idea to Deep Cove and Kate's Park, I'm still expecting that to go through. So I'm still expecting, and I will work for getting it to Deep Cove and to Kate's Park. Do you have, perhaps Mr. Cohen, do you have any idea when that might come before for public input or to council?
Yeah, so through the acting mayor, the priority for us would be on this segment first in terms of Windridge to Plymouth. We can certainly continue the planning for the spurs to Deep Cove and the spurs to Kate's Way, Arwichin, just that the implementation cost of that is now outside of the 5-year plan. But there's obviously subject to future discussions.
But we haven't dropped it.
No.
Thank you.
Just slowing down.
Thank you. I think that answers all of my questions, and I clarified some things there that other people may have thought differently about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Paul. Second time.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Hansen. I would just like to pick out a couple of things that have been said. First of all, I'm the last person in the world that wants to slow down any progress, as you constantly hear from me on this council. I've been a strong proponent of Spirit Trail since it got on our table 2 years ago, and feel very strongly that it needs to get to Deep Cove, as I've stated. But in this case, I feel like we got to do this right. It's been so long in the works since 2012. I think we first started talking about it. So I have a lot of trouble with the northern route, as I've mentioned. What we're deciding on right now is spending $10 to $15 million, some of it from grants. But at the end of the day, it won't look much different on the northern route than it does today. And it won't be used by people who use active transportation. They've told us that. And it would be a huge waste of taxpayers' money and grant funding. And in my opinion, a huge loss of opportunity. So I won't be voting in favor of the northern route. And in addition to that, that's great. We're finally getting some meetings with Tsleil-Waututh, but 2 months it's going to be too late. We need to talk to them today or whenever they're willing about the Spirit Trail. Because if we decide tonight that it's got to go on the northern route, then that's going to rule out any discussions with Tsleil-Waututh anyway. It's, as Councillor Backus said, building it around Tsleil-Waututh lands. So I don't see how we can proceed without having that in place. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Back.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Hansen. I think we're hearing a lot of questions around the table. And I think, you know, the issue of the bridge and, excuse me. Sorry. Thank you. The issue around the consultation with Wildbird Trust, that was brought up to me on Thursday night. I was at an event with Erwin Ustindi, and that's what prompted his outreach to us. It was quite a lengthy email. As we can all see, we received just over an hour ago and have not had a chance to digest. And so I share those concerns, not comfortable with really proceeding with a bridge that could impact their interests in the wildlife corridor in that area, which is, that's a real issue. So I want to acknowledge that. I agree with all of the comments of my colleague, Councillor Pope. We have one opportunity to get this right. I know it's been many years in the making. I don't think we're getting it right tonight. I think the northern route, as has been pointed out, is going to essentially look the same, is going to be just as comfortable or uncomfortable to ride with children, with people of varying abilities. This is the Spirit Trail. This is a legacy project that we have the chance to create something that we're going to be proud about for generations. I'm not feeling that pride right now as we look at this particular route, the recommended route. I also don't like to slow down progress, but I think in this instance, we would be wise to take a step back, do it right, do it with the partners at the table. We've not had our partners at the table. Tsleil-Waututh Nation needs to be involved in this. I will say that again. They haven't been, and that's nice that we have a council-to-council meeting in 2 months' time. It's not going to help us on this particular project as we try to make a decision. So I'm going to be voting against the northern route as proposed because I think we can do better. And as I say, we've got one chance to do it. So those are my thoughts.
Could I just ask a question to the clerk?
Yes.
What are we expecting tonight in regards to direction?
Thank you, through acting mayor. Currently, the motion on the floor is just to receive the report for information.
Right. And as it's a workshop, we usually don't put a motion forward.
As it is a meeting of council, it is council's pleasure should they want to consider any sort of direction to staff. However, typically workshops are reserved to receive for information and provide discussion and general direction to staff.
So I would move support of the northern route with additional discussions in regards to the McCartney Creek crossing, pending discussion with the Maplewood Bird Trust.
There's a motion on the floor now, a motion to proceed.
Receipt, I would just move receipt of the report, but I would provide that motion. Is that appropriate, Ms. Clerk?
Thank you, through acting mayor. I'd recommend that we handle receiving the information or receiving the report for information, vote on that resolution first, and then perhaps if council wishes to entertain a motion arising from that, that would be appropriate.
So I would call the question on receipt.
Call the question on receipt. All in favor? Opposed, if any?
So I would move
Motion
support of the
received.
northern route with additional discussion in regards to the McCartney Creek crossing. In addition to further discussion with the Wild Bird Trust. And return that back to council.
If I may.
First,
For seconder
Just
for my motion. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Councillor Pope.
Sorry, thank you through the acting mayor. If Councillor Pope wishes to second, she may also propose a friendly amendment to what has been moved, should it be accepted by the mover.
Okay, I'm sorry for my lack of clarity on this, but so
This is a motion for the northern route.
this is the motion for the northern route. And I would like to propose a friendly amendment to the motion for the northern route. Can I speak about that?
Sure.
Yes, okay, all right, just want to make sure I'm following process here. So my amendment would be, in addition to asking staff to report back on the bridge situation and the discussion with the Wildlife Trust people, that we also have discussions with the Tsleil-Waututh, and that we have, let's see, how can I frame this?
You can just say that and it can probably encapsulate a whole bunch of things. So,
But the problem is, that's not exactly how I want to do it. And I'm sorry that I'm just not quick enough on my feet here to make.
Take your time,
Yeah,
Councillor
it's
Pope.
attached to
What,
Northern Route, so I can't actually do that. So sorry. I'll just withdraw. Thank you. Sorry.
so I have a seconder.
Yeah, so.
Thank you through the acting mayor. I just want to clarify for council what has been moved at this point in time. It has been moved that there is support for the northern route with additional discussion regarding the McCartney Bridge pending additional consultation with Wildbird Trust.
Yes. And if that's moved in second. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of questions in regards to the bridge and obviously the consultation, we brought that up before. I think there are some questions that we still have to ask ourselves in regards to the routing on Plymouth and what that infrastructure is going to look like. You know, I'm aware that the majority of the cost here is in that bridge. And I think there has to be a very clear understanding on the part of council what the economies of scale are on that bridge. We have recently put in the bike lanes along Mount Seymour Parkway. I think it's also important to understand how the mode shift has changed over the years. My understanding is the shift to alternate forms of transportation, such as the bike, have been not a huge uptick across the district. I think in this time where finances are very challenging, that we have to be very careful what we're spending, even if we're getting a grant, because after all, there is only one taxpayer.
thank you, Councillor Murray. Further discussion on the motion?
Well, Acting Mayor Hansen, I would just like to point out that the recommendation was always to receive for information. We are in the practice of not making these sorts of motions at workshops, and so I'm just unclear as to why we're making an exception tonight. This was meant to come back, I believe, on the February 24th regular meeting. So why do we need to make a decision this evening?
I do believe we have prerogative to give direction if council agrees. And I do want to give certainty to the community that the northern route is supported, I believe, by the majority of council and the community. But I do think the issues around the bridge have come up with all of us. And I think we need to pursue the answers.
Yeah, I
to
just
those
think that we
questions.
need to be aware that with workshops, thank you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were finished. We are in the practice of not making these sort of motions in workshops. So it's a departure from our typical way we do things.
Should we
So
have the
maybe
clerk
CAO
respond to that?
Could comment.
Thank you through the acting mayor. Typically, council does not provide direction at workshops. However, as it is a quorum of council, a resolution may be considered. However, it would be at the discretion of the chair whether or not this would be considered in order or not, or whether or not this should be considered at a later date.
So I appreciate.
Councillor Back, I'm going to consider the motion in order. I'm personally going to vote against it because I've made my position clear, and I view it to be unnecessary in the context of receipt of the report. But I am going to consider the motion in order. Councillor Mo?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Hanson. Just want to get clarification. If this comes back, like, my concern is missing the deadline for the grant. Because if we miss that, our real costs are going to be $7 or $8 million. So notwithstanding that we do need to engage with the Wild Bird Trust if we haven't, which, I'm a little surprised. Do we have enough time in the next 2 weeks for staff to engage? And then we need to have another meeting to discuss this, or is this comes, like, I'm just looking at the timing for all this. How does it work? Maybe I can get some direction from the clerk. If we were to approve this motion from Councillor Murray, that there's engagement, when would it come back to council, or how would it come back to council?
Thank you, through your worship. I would actually direct that to Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, through the acting mayor. So couple of things to unpack from the last couple of comments. I just really want to clarify, staff have been engaging with both TWN and the Wild Bird Trust. I just want to really clarify that, that we've been doing that for the past couple of years through Shane and his team. So they are aware, and we're aware of their concerns. Granted, we haven't connected with them since summer, but many of our stakeholders we haven't, because we needed to get our heads down to do the work. In terms of the 24th, that is a critical date for should we be proceeding with a grant application. That is the only opportunity for council to give us the nod to put in that application. As many of you know, with many of these senior level of government applications, we have to get a resolution from council. So I want to clarify that on the 24th, that's more of an administrative process as opposed to a deep dive discussion on Spirit Trail. There'll be many more discussions on Spirit Trail with council in the future, but the 24th is specifically focused on just that grant application as a placeholder. If we move forward, we can, if council directs us, we can certainly give them a call this week, right? That's not a challenging thing for us to do. It's just that we wanted to get some certainty that the project was moving forward, and we had an idea of the alignment and the bridge location before we started to go into in-depth conversations with stakeholders.
Mr. Cohen, if you apply, you can put a placeholder in for the grant, but if we change direction, we don't have to use it. There's your out. So you can still do it. You can still apply for the grant, people. But if it comes back that the bridge is not supported, then we just don't use the grant. There you go.
Councillor Forbes?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple of things because I seconded that motion and I haven't spoken yet. I just want to emphasize again, the total estimated DNV cost for all of this route is under 4 million. We are not talking about 7 or 8 million that we're doing. And I would like to also say that I said the same thing, that I would have a caveat that there be a contact made with the Wild Bird Trust to sort of clarify this email, and if something went astray, because that's my one concern as well. But I do want the northern route, and I don't want it delayed anymore, because that means getting to Deep Cove or Kate's Park will be delayed even more. And we'll be looking at 10 years before anything happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Pope?
Support Councillor Back's position on the voting of motions in a workshop. It is a departure. It wasn't what I expected. Generally, with workshops, we're trying to get to consensus, I think was the whole reason for having workshops, and trying to hear other people's views and that sort of thing, and to give and to give staff some guidance. So I'm objecting to the fact that this has been turned into a motion when I think it should just be the receipt of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Poe. Call the question on the motion. Maybe just read the motion one more time.
Yes, thank you. Through acting mayor, that council support the northern route with additional discussion on the McCartney Creek Bridge pending additional consultation with the Wild Bird Trust.
Question, all those in favor? Opposed? Yes. Thank you very much. There's members of the public that have come very graciously to share their views. 3 people have signed up already, but we do have a little time, so we could hear from other members of the public. Would James Mitchell like to come forward and share his views? You have 3 minutes to address council.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Your worship, mayor and members of council, I'm here tonight. I'm James Mitchell. I'm here tonight as a member of the Seymour Neighborhood Alliance, many of whom are wearing these yellow stickers tonight, to speak in favor of the Spirit Trail routing as recommended by staff, namely using the trail network in Windridge Park and connecting to the Parkgate Village area using the Northlands Trail. Parkgate is one of the cores of our community. Getting the route there will allow for a truncation off to both Deep Cove and Cates Park. So we're in favor of that. This routing of the Spirit Trail is consistent with the feedback our organization has received from many residents of the Seymour area that have reached out to us on this. We are also confident that it represents the wishes of the vast majority of residents of the district, as reflected in the fall resident survey, which demonstrated a strong public support for maximizing use of existing trails versus local roads, balancing accessibility, green space protection, tree preservation, and costs. Our organization has always supported the eastern expansion of the Spirit Trail based on the following principles. 1, that trail user safety is of the highest importance. Accordingly, the Spirit Trail expansion should utilize existing trails and stay off local roads whenever possible. And that in these tight fiscal circumstances, cost efficiencies need to be considered. This recommended routing meets both of those principles and is consistent with the spirit of the Spirit Trail, although I know some would disagree with that. There's different interpretations of what the spirit should be. I would also like to thank DNV staff for all of their work on this and for incorporating the feedback of residents into your recommendation. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Karen Lamar.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you to council and to staff for all the work that you've done on the Spirit Trail over the last couple of years. My name is Karen Lamar, and I am a resident and taxpayer in the District North Vancouver Seymour area. I have lived for over 30 years on Roslyn, on the high side of Roslyn. And I am here to support Council's option 1 for the northern route. And I think for many of the reasons that James has echoed, one is that it seems to be the most economical choice. It's important given that costs are rising. And, you know, obviously our taxes are going up due to a number, you know, of economic uncertainty, wastewater treatment plant and things like that. And so I think that this choice does provide some certainty and cost effectiveness in that, as well as its use of existing trails. I think that, you know, one of the major concerns for me with the Spirit Trail has to do with safety. Our house is on the high side of Roslyn, and we probably have the steepest driveway of all driveways on the high side of Roslyn. And from a safety perspective, I have to go down my driveway backwards, like I have to back down my driveway. And to have increased trail users, I want to make sure that that's, you know, under safe circumstances. And I think that The more that we can use existing trails so that we're not having to cross driveways is something that I want council and staff to really consider because again, we want everyone to have fair use and enjoyment, but we want to make sure that they're safe while they're there. So in terms of, future routings of the Spirit Trail and obviously from Kate's to Deep Cove, that is considered as the safety of users as well as for the people that live on the streets that will be affected. And again, thank you, Shane, and all your staff for all the work that you've done. I know that there's a lot of, there's a lot of decisions to be made here, but I'm excited to see eventually when the Spirit Trail is able to be used by the residents and guests to our communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Adrian Cook.
There's two cooks in the
Acting Mayor, councilors, district staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Adrienne Cook. I was fortunate enough to be born and raised in Deep Cove, and now I have the privilege of raising my children here. We bought our first house in 2016 in the Seymour area. That's right, that's the year the prices skyrocketed. We are avid cyclers and hikers. I don't even dare count the small fortune worth of bikes we've accumulated in our garage. We regularly take the kids all over the Seymour area on their bikes and use the district staff's recommended route along Northlands with ease. I mentioned I have a young family who loves to hike and cycle and a house with a big mortgage because I think it goes to show how important the Spirit Trail route is to us. We are sensitive to property tax increases, we are sensitive to safety, and we are excited about the Spirit Trail Eastern Extension. The recommended northern route along Northlands Golf Course uses an already in existence multi-use pathway with paved surfaces, clear width, signage, and lighting. It's almost entirely through green space, making it a beautiful trail for everyone to enjoy. Another positive, it eliminates the need to build a third bridge over the Thomas Creek where there are already two bridges in close proximity to each other. It doesn't make good fiscal sense to build another one. This route also saves trees. The district has said the northern route would mean cutting down 50% less trees than the southern route. Using a pathway that is already in existence, cutting down less trees in the forest, and eliminating building a bridge will save taxpayer dollars, which is so important, especially in this economy where our cost of living is so high, what with higher interest rates, expensive groceries, and yearly increases in property taxes. In addition to being the most fiscally responsible, the northern route is a safer route. I don't think I can express enough the difference between biking with my children on a trail, which is tucked into the forest with no cars nearby and very few driveways, versus biking along a residential street. On the trail, my kids are free to cycle or walk for that matter ahead, enjoying the outdoors without much care to potential danger. On roads, my kids need to stay very close to me. I'm constantly yelling out, check for driveways, slow down, watch for that parked car, wait up. I fear a parked car will open their door and my kids will crash into it, or a car will be backing out of their driveway and not see them and hit them. I fear a car will be driving down the street and be distracted and run my kids off the road. It is not enjoyable or relaxing for any of us. I think it is also important to readdress the incorrect notion that the northern route has steeper grades than the southern route. Due to our topography, both the routes have grade issues. Breaking it down, looking at the southern route, from Roslyn Boulevard to Fairway using Dolly Road, the grades are between 14 and 16%. The grades at Roche Point Drive are 16% at its steepest and 13% on an overall average. There are no options for switchbacks on these routes. Comparatively, the northern route has a trailhead at Deep Cove Road in Strathcona. There is a short section of similarly steep grade between 12 and 14%, but here switchbacks can be built to ease the grade and make it more accessible to more people. I urge you to run the Spirit Trail along the recommended northern route in order to reduce the financial burden on district taxpayers and keep trail users off roads as much as possible so that everybody, including my kids, will be safer.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? There's three, we'll take three and then we'll cut it off at that point. Just state your name and where you live.
My name is David Cook. I live on at 1778 Emerson Court, North Vancouver. This is an argument against the route going through Roche Point Forest. I've been studying the Roche Point Forest area since the late 1990s, during which I produced a report while a member of the Parks and Natural Environment Advisory Committee, which explains that Roche Point Forest, through which the Spirit Trail extension may go, is an old-growth forest, the only low-elevation old-growth forest in North Vancouver. I will leave my report, which I have here. I don't know if it's of any use to you, but there are two big reports that were written in 1990s, and so I'll just explain a little bit about this forest and its value. While partially modified by logging in the past, the logging was not extensive, and the forest has retained its old-growth ecology and characteristics. There are old-growth Douglas firs that survive that logging, and from time to time, one of these trees has been a bald eagle's nest. There is also a number of magnificent and old big leaf maples, which may or may not be in the path of the Spirit Trail extension proposed. Some of these maples have been recorded on the BC Big Tree Registry. Others are to be measured and will be included. I recommend, therefore, that the Spirit Trail extension be not constructed through any part of Roche Point Forest, as any modification of the forest's ecology would be detrimental to its function as an old-growth forest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Is this any use to you? No. Oh. Oh, under here. Okay.
Acting Mayor, councillors, my name is Ian Rosinas, and I am the chairman of Cycling Without Age North Shore. On behalf of Cycling Without Age North Shore, I'm pleased to share with you our report for 2024, a copy of which has been made available for your reference. Today, I would like to talk about our plans for 2025 and express our gratitude to the district and TransLink for their support in the past year. The screen shows, where is that?
Can you state your residence at least to a block?
I live in the district of North Vancouver.
Whereabouts in the district?
In the Seymour Valley.
Thank you.
So this slide shows a couple of people from Berkeley Care Residence enjoying a ride in the Windridge Forest. In 2024, we operated 4 two-seater and 1 wheelchair-carrying trishaws with 30 volunteers. We served 17 care organizations and provided 625 people with rides on our equipment. Let me just next the next one. How do I get to this? So this, our new wheelchair carrying trishaw, shown in action on the screen, was very popular, and we are currently fundraising to purchase a second one. In 2025, we will operate from 4 bases at Park Royal, Mahon Park, and Creekstone Care Centre, which are provided free of charge, and at Lynn Valley Library, for which there is a $1,200 annual charge. Free servicing of our trishaws was and will continue to be provided by Bicycle Sports Pacific and Velo Lifestyle. Let's get the next one. We are grateful to the district and TransLink for their exceptional support in 2024, which allowed us to purchase the trishaw shown on the screen through the Bicycle Infrastructure Capital Cost Share Program. You can see that we have attached the decals of the organizations on the trishaw to acknowledge this support. We especially want to thank Brendan James, member of staff, whose enthusiasm and initiative procured the TransLink funding for this new trishaw. We also want to thank Brendan for identifying a location for parking our trailer under the Lynn Valley Library to serve as a base, and Councillor Marr for facilitating the use of the space where we can store and charge our batteries in the fan room and the antechamber. As you can see, we have also attached decals to the district and TransLink to the trailer. The Parks Department has improved the trails in Kirkstone Park to allow our easy use in safe riding, and staff are helping to ensure the Spirit Trail extension through Windridge Park is suitable for our equipment. We truly appreciate the support we have received and continue to receive from the district. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. So I'll take one more presentation from the public. Mr. Lake?
All right, thank you. Councillors and Acting Mayor and staff for the report today. So I've been intimately following along and involved with the Spirit Trail project for the past 2.5 years. So just some background, I'm Stephen Lake. I'm a resident on Beachview in Deep Cove. I'm also the liaison for Hub Cycling for the District of North Vancouver. And so we meet regularly, roughly every month or so, with staff around the various transportation projects underway within the district. With regards to the Spirit Trail, and Hub has published this in our various letters to the district, but this is among our top priorities for the entire North Shore, and seeing the Spirit Trail east of Seymour as a critical link in connecting the communities east of Seymour, especially making those accessible to all, so families, children, many users out there we've talked about this evening. And I think the comment I just want to leave everyone with today is that there are numerous compromises, points of debate on the trail, et cetera. I think a couple of things are clear. Number one, every route possible today leads through this Windridge Park, McCartney Creek crossing. And so it's very clear at this point, we need to go ahead and get that built. We've now spent the last 2 years with a lot of great diligent work by staff and council and exploring every possible iteration of this project, every version of the route, et cetera. But it's time to build. We're 2 years into it. We got to get the actual shovels in the ground here. And so appreciate there are different options. We could still explore further. There are questions to ask, but at some point we've got to draw the line and say, we've done amazing work for 2 years in diligence. We've got to move forward. And so I think that the number one point I was going to leave council with is there's an opportunity coming up, clear deadline for the grant funding. We just need to give staff the direction to go ahead and say, let's go start there. If we want to spend more time debating specific routing details of option 1 or 2 or something else, that can happen, but let's give the clear direction to build the first part of this and actually get the ball rolling. That's number one. Number two is from Hub's perspective, the key value of this link is providing that link all the way into Deep Cove and Kate's Park. And we've heard this discussed several times today, but ending this trail at Parkgate is not, it gets us part of the way there, but we've got to have a plan in place to get all the way there. And I think the budget we talked about 2 years ago and approved again last year was a $20 million total budget, 50% of the district, so 10 million total. We're seeing it today a project cost of 10 million, half of that with less than 4 from the district. So we've talked about reducing the district's portion of this from 10 million to 4 million already. I think we really have to look hard at, how do we find the additional couple million in there over the next 5-year capital plan to get all the way to Deep Cove and Kate's Park, because that is such a high value destination for folks all across the district here. So I'll leave with that. Let's get moving. Let's go ahead. We've got to start building this thing. And then number two, let's make sure we get all the way to Deep Cove and Kate's Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Councillor Amir wishes to make a statement.
We are one of the very fortunate municipalities in this region, in that we attract some of the best staff. And we attract a great number of skilled engineers. And we have 5 of them in this room tonight, 2 at the back and 3 on the back table. And one of them has been with us for 10 years. And Shane Devine is leaving us. This is his last meeting, as was previously stated. But I wanted to go last because I've known him the longest. And I think Karen's known him just as long as I have, before he was even a thought, because we went to school with his mother and I grew up with his mother and lived with his grandma and his grandpa for many years, and may have changed a diaper or 2 along the way. But he knew I was going to say this. But I just wanted to thank him. He was born in Deep Cove and grew up in Deep Cove. And he has a passion for this community, and he is staying on the North Shore. Of course, we always have that option of you can take the summer off and have every other Friday off if you stay. I offer that to everybody. But I'm just so proud of you, and we're so proud of you for the work that you've done for us and the journey that you're on. And you're an exceptional engineer. Sometimes we don't agree, but I appreciate your honesty and your work ethic. And that, I think, comes directly from your parents and your grandparents. But I just want to wish you, certainly on behalf of everyone, council, the mayor, and our staff, we wish you all the best. And you can always come back in a few years when what you're about to do bores you, because we'll still be here. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Councilor Mary. The clerk has asked that I seek a motion to adopt the minutes of the November 25th workshop. Second?
Second.
Call the question. All those in favor, opposed, if any? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the public for coming. Very important issue. And we're very gratified that we had the input of so many of you. Thank you to council for all of their important contributions and deliberations and all the hard work and homework that goes into the coming up with the statements. And thank you. I'll accept adjournment. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you.